Hi, everyone, and welcome to the June 2021 edition of Connection Point. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by my friend and colleague, Allen Orr, who, as we record this, is on the verge of becoming the 75th president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And that will happen next week at the AILA annual conference. Allen, how are you feeling? We're going to have this, pandemic virtual conference again for the second year. How are you feeling about that? How are you feeling about stepping into this role that you've been preparing for the past 5 years on the executive committee?
I'm super excited. I think we're all really looking forward to a time when we can actually meet again in person. So that's what I'm actually looking to in this presidential year. Hopefully that we will have at least one real live conference together, and missing it being the big grand ballroom at the annual conference. But other than that, I think, it's going to be a fine year. I think you pretty much laid the groundwork for how to live in a virtual world and manage AILA in that society. And that's sort of what I want to continue with, is sort of what you've done specifically in governance, of just making the board more efficient, making committees more efficient, and sort of building all that together, and then sort of adding with sort of a focus on community.
So important. I think that the pandemic has really, in some ways, it's made community building easier, I think, in that we've all got this common thing to rally around and push back against and push through. And we've needed to depend on each other more than ever to get through the toughness of the challenges that have been posed by the pandemic and by, let's face it, the outgoing presidential administration that we had during the AILA year, and a lot of challenges with the incoming administration as well. So I think that in a way that's helped to bring our community together in ways that maybe it wouldn't have as easily done without those challenges to rally behind. But at the same time, of course, the existence of those challenges has also made it more difficult for us to be in person and to really feel connected to one another, and just presented opportunities for us to engage in making those connection points, if I can use that phrase, in ways that are different than we have before. And I think that we've been pretty successful in helping the community to stay connected through a series of roundtable discussions and online webinars, and even our liaison activity that has been, completed by Zoom, and the meetings that we have. We've done about as much as we can to replicate that sort of in-person experience that we would normally have for these types of events. And I think we've come through it pretty well. I wonder, Allen, if you think that going forward, there'll be a segment of the AILA community that wants to continue to connect in the ways that we have during the pandemic, and not necessarily to go back to doing everything as we did before. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think the goals are to combine the best of both worlds, because the great thing about the virtual world is it eliminated a lot of the financial difficulties that some members may have traveling to conferences, and made it able to come to their office in a way that we hadn't done before, which has been very successful. Actually, the first virtual conference under your leadership was super successful. I think we, 200% more than what we budgeted for that conference. And I hope that will continue for this year. So I want to continue to meet members where they are. And part of building that community is understanding that some of that community can't always meet in person, but I want to make sure that we sort of look to both aspects of what the membership is calling for. And I think that, you've already started, we already started, and you already started sort of doing that in some of the ways that we have the conferences, also in the ways that we sort of make available local training, and how we're sort of leading into chapters, sort of working with the national level more, and just want to continue to build on those things.
So what would you say you see are being kind of the biggest challenges going forward into the coming year, in addition to obviously, dealing with a transition of maybe hopefully moving away from all virtual events to having a more of a combination or all in-person events again, and how we're going to make that transition? What else do you see are the major challenges that we have facing us in the coming year? And maybe I should use the word opportunities instead of challenges, but what do we have to really kind of sink our teeth into in the coming year?
I think externally, we have the challenges of Congress dealing with immigration or not, and sort of facing the virtual TikTok of the fix, or the grand new fix, meaning learning something totally different like we did in 1996. Internally, I think our biggest challenge is understanding our problems. We really need to focus on who our membership is and leverage that to push us forward. A lot of our problems that we have, we just don't know who we are because we're much bigger than we've ever been before, and we're going to continue to grow. So we want to make those interconnectivities to sort of build those synergies to sort of push out our power.
Yeah, I guess we just keep coming back to connection and community and making sure we know one another and what our priorities are and how to pull together to get those accomplished. This may be an unfair question, but as you look at the transition that we've seen from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, what are the areas where you've been pleased with how things have gone, and what areas would you say are situations where the Biden administration could maybe be doing more or a better job, or is not quite in alignment with what AILA's goals and what our community would like to see the administration achieving?
Right. I think on the humanitarian focus of just asylum and the treatment of individuals that have difficult circumstances, I think the administration has been very slow in responding to those needs. I think also in finding and understanding that they are now in control of the government, and we need a strong advocate for immigrant rights within the government to say, we're just going to change these things. This just isn't who we are. I think that they have rolled back a lot of the programs, and some of it takes time, and some of it also takes political speed. So, and just sort of bringing people along, sort of changing it immediately won't take people have a different understanding of what immigration is in society, which will affect us in the midterm. So I think that those sort of swift changes might not have been to our benefit, but still are needed in many cases. But we start seeing some of the closing of the detention centers. We've seen the reuniting of the families. We've seen, certain priorities rolled back, but at the same time, we still have Title 42. We still have tons of bans that don't really make sense to everyday practice. And we still have challenges of just management decisions at local service centers and offices of doing things that just don't make sense anymore. It's time to sort of modernize our government and sort of push it forward. And I think, I would be interested in the same question of you, and kind of in that way of, what would be your parting thoughts about what will happen to Congress to me? What's sort of your thought? Because you've also been in this position, you were in the position during the transition itself. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on what you've seen.
Well, I mean, I share a lot of your point of view about, what's worked and what still needs more work. I think that the administration has said a lot of the right things. I mean, the very welcoming and inclusive rhetoric that we've been hearing coming out of this administration is really significant, and the value of it really cannot be overstated. I mean, it because of the contrast between this administration and the last, it was really important that the Biden administration come in and on day one put down a marker of, we are a welcoming nation and we value immigration and immigrants, and we know that it's good for the country and we're going to promote it and protect it. That was really important. It was an important message to send to the country. It was an important message to send to the world, which I think has become spooked about coming to the United States in large number because of all of the very, anti-immigrant rhetoric and really kind of hate-based stuff that was getting hurled out there by the last administration that really discouraged people from wanting to come to this country. And it's really important for the Biden administration to turn that perception around in the world. And I think they've made good progress toward that. But I would say that I am disappointed that we continue to treat a global health crisis as if it's an immigration crisis when it's not. And that using Title 42 and these other presidential proclamations to exclude people from the United States who could prove that they are not a public health threat to the country is very problematic and needs to be undone. So it's not all birthday cake. There's definitely some broccoli in there. And I think we're going to have to, continue to do what we've always done, which is to, praise and be in agreement with the administration when they are in line with our objectives and what we think is the right direction for the country to be taking with regard to immigration law and policy. And when they're doing something that we think is not the right direction, we need to call that out as well and hold them accountable. And I think we've been doing that so far, and we'll have to continue to do it. And that just makes this administration like every other administration other than the Trump administration that I've ever encountered, right? As an immigration lawyer, right? With Trump, it was like there was almost nothing that we could ever agree with.
When I think about your year and everything that just has happened, when I remember it, I think I will remember you as the adaptation president who's constantly changing to meet the format, be it the president, be it COVID, be it the board, be it governance. How would you like to be remembered as this year of your presidency? What would be your legacy?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. I guess, this year was not what I thought it would be. I thought, I think every AILA president comes into the office having spent the previous 5 years on the executive committee, kind of thinking about the ways that they want to improve and change and enhance the organization, make things better. And we all have that kind of agenda when we come in. And I had one too, and it wasn't executed. I mean, because of everything that you just said, Allen, because, life intervened and we had all of these unanticipated obstacles to overcome. And so suddenly, I wasn't going to be talking about, a leadership cultivation plan anymore, because I was just going to be focusing on how the heck we were going to convert an in-person annual conference to a virtual annual conference, or how we were going to have all of our board meetings by Zoom instead of in person, and what that was going to mean. So there have just been a lot of, in some ways, roadblocks to accomplishing what I might have thought this year was going to be. But that doesn't mean it was a failed year. It just means that we pushed through in a different way than we thought we were going to. And I'm not going away. I'm still going to be a part of AILA. I'm still going to care about AILA and want to be active in pursuing all of the goals that I had planned to pursue more vigorously when I became president. And I have faith that the organization will continue to move forward and, make those changes that are going to make us stronger and better. And I do think that's a lot of what we put in place this year in terms of reinventing the wheel and doing a lot of things differently will continue to serve us well, even as we emerge from the pandemic. And, as we were saying earlier, I think some of those things are probably changes that we'll keep, or that some members would like us to keep, because they have adapted their practices in a way that now makes sense for them and they don't want to go back. And so we need to be there to fill that need. And I feel like this year we made a lot of progress toward doing that, to providing practice management support and wellness resources and all of those things to members to get them through the pandemic, that will now continue to help them shape and improve their practices going forward. So I think, I guess I want to be known as the survivor president, who got us through to the other side of this really difficult and challenging time in a way that made us stronger on the other end.
That's excellent. That's exactly what you did. You made us, we all survived through all of this, and the act were actually better. I mean, it could have been really bad if the annual conference didn't go well last year, which is so important that people come to the annual conference this year. And so I think, what would be your sort of parting advice to me as an incoming president? And then what would be your advice to a new member of AILA? What would be those two nuggets of just hindsight that you have of growth that you would sort of say to an incoming president and you would say to a new member?
Well, to an incoming president, to you, Allen, I would say, remember that every word you speak matters, and that everything you say has an impact. And when you're a leader in an organization like this, I mean, that's always true that your words matter, but when you're a leader in an organization like this, they matter even more. So making sure that you get it right every time, or as right as you can every time. You'll make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but just being aware that and conscious of the fact that every word that you speak, every statement that we put out, everything that we say, every action that we take will have a reaction and needs to be thought through. And I know that you will do what you've always done, which is, take the advice of all the people around you, listen to all points of view, and then come to the most reasoned decision that you can. And sometimes we'll get it right, and sometimes we'll get it wrong. Certainly I got it wrong sometimes, and sometimes I did better than others. But we just do the best we can to make sure that we are always very careful in our words and our actions. And then I think the other thing is, once you make that decision, once you've taken all that input and you've, come up with the best possible course of action based on all the information that's available to you at the time, take that action decisively. Don't look back. Don't worry about the criticism that you get, because you'll get some, no matter what decision you make, because you can't make 16,000 people happy. And just know that you've done the best that you could in that moment, and don't take any of the negative reaction that you get personally. Take it constructively, and move forward. And I have been more or less successful in that at different points throughout my year. It's not always easy to do, but those I think would be the two most important things. And I know that you'll do those things. The advice that I would give to a new member, and that's a great question. The singular thing that is the most valuable about AILA membership is the connections that you build with other people in this association. Because unlike almost any other professional association I can think of, this is an extremely collegial, community-oriented group of almost 16,000 people. And that is the most valuable thing about your membership is the ability to connect with other people who are going to listen to you, who are going to hear what you have to say, who are going to answer your questions, who are not going to think of you as a competitor, but as a colleague, and who are going to help you build your practice and grow. And for me, in my own AILA experience, it hasn't just been about professional growth. It's been that I have met some of my closest friends through this association because I got involved, because I got engaged, because I put myself out there and met people. And now some of my best friends are fellow AILA members. So I would say that my biggest piece of advice for a new member is to get involved and talk to people and build those relationships, because they will benefit you both personally and professionally, and they make the membership fee worth it 100%.
Wow, that's excellent. Well, on behalf of the membership, which I'm not empowered to do necessarily, but I know on behalf of XCOM and the board, we are extremely pleased to have had this year with you. And I look forward on our continued journey together in leadership for this organization. So thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Alan. I can't wait to see what you're going to do. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your speech. I know you've got a lot of fascinating ideas and a totally new perspective that you bring to AILA as the first African-American president of our association. I'm really grateful to you for your time and your commitment, your passion, and dedication toward the organization.